Good morning, folks.
We're a little early.
It's 10 a.m., so you can probably get started. Welcome. And Stoyan, do you mind going through roll call?
Sure. Andrew is here.
I'm here.
Charles, I just, for Charles Calvano, I just found an email yesterday. I missed that email, but he has conflicts with the schedule, so this is why he's not attending. And I apologize. I didn't find it earlier. So, Sue Kaufman. Sue? No. Mark?
Here.
Sean Carlstrom?
I'm here.
Oh, Sean, okay. Damon?
I'm here.
Cody?
I'm here.
Todd?
Here.
Rob Graper? Chris Seaman?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Al? Mike Bark? I think I saw Mark. Mike, sorry. Mike? No? Okay. Will Rodriguez? Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 attending. We have a quorum.
All right, perfect. If any members of the public would like to introduce themselves, now is the time.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Terry Beals, representing Sound Transit, Director of Regulatory Affairs.
And I just saw Sue on my screen, so welcome, Sue.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here.
All right, thank you. Anyone else want to introduce themselves? All right, next up, review and approve the agenda. So take a look. I'll give you time to read through it. There's a lot, and then I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Sue. Todd, did you second?
I did.
Thank you, Todd. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. And the motion passes. If we can bring up the minutes from the last meeting. Take a look through those, and if you've got any revisions, please speak up. Otherwise, feel free to make a motion.
This is Chris. I'll move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, Chris.
This is Todd. I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? And the motion passes. Thank you. So if we can bring the agenda back up. So next up on the agenda is reviewing significant changes. Stoyan, do you mind taking over here? I'm not sure how you want to go through stuff. We can, maybe have, if you want to go first, and then we can have folks speak up if they've had a chance so far to go through their chapters and so forth.
We have chapters 1 12 and 31, and we have chapter 9 and chapter 11. I'm not sure if we have other chapters that we didn't receive, but this is what we received, and we have everything posted on the website. I don't know, we have two options. I can start with chapter 11, or Sue can start with chapter 1. I don't mind either way. And we have the rest of the chapters. We'll have time for the next meeting, but we can discuss that after we finish with the chapters we already have prepared. So again, option 1 is if we start with chapter 1, followed by 12 and 31, and then go to 9 and 11, or I can start with chapter 11 first, and then we follow the rest of it.
You
I don't
mind
have a
starting
preference.
with chapter 11 first, and then that'll set the stage for all of us, so
Okay.
we know exactly what to do. How's
I
that?
will. Yes. With chapter 11, I overloaded the document a little bit because I included all all changes, and some of them are not significant, but I wanted to send you an example for your review. So it's a little bit too much, but not really everything is needed at this time. And with chapter 11, I started with chapter 35 because this is important. These are the reference standards, and this is where you will see the ANSI A117.1 2017. You know, the current one is 2009. And we already talked a little bit about significant changes in the reference standards. And in the bullet points, I have only 3 that I think will be expenses and will have significant change. So these are the enhanced dimensions for clear floor spaces and turning spaces. And there is an exception for existing buildings. So these are for the new buildings only. And the reason for this bigger dimensions is that the standard recognizes spaces needed by persons using scooters and motorized wheelchairs. So currently we have only, everything is based on wheelchairs, and 2017 ANSI is the first standard that recognizes bigger mobility devices. The second bullet point is we have modified provisions for exterior routes, curb cuts, blended transitions, accessible parking for consistency with the federal public right-of-way accessibility guidelines. It's famous with the title PROAC, and it's being posted on the US Access Board for years, formally not adopted by DOJ as part of the accessibility standards, but 2017 ANSI recognizes the PROAC. The last bullet point, new provisions for electrical vehicle charging stations and acoustic standards for classrooms. So these, I cannot say that these will have fiscal impact, but these are new provisions that we need to take into account. So, Andrew, I don't know if we need to vote on each one or after I finish with everything. I guess for the
I think after you finish is the best time to vote.
Okay. The first section in chapter 11 is 1104.4, and we have exceptions, and I'm targeting exception 1.5. It wasn't in 2018 code. What is it about is that it's related to multi-story buildings and facilities, and the exception is for accessible routes to stories with aggregate area of not more than 3,000 square feet. It was an existing exception, but a new inclusion was added for structures with 4 or more dwelling units. And the reason is coordination with the Fair Housing Act. Okay, so the existing exception in some regards was creating issues with conflicts with the Fair Housing Act, and the new exclusion is intended to align with the Fair Housing Act. So the restriction is intended to address smaller efficiency units and avoid conflicts with FHA, as I said, and to ensure the exception is consistent with the provisions for type B units in the International Building Code. First, I put yes regarding the cost, but then I added uncertain because I'm not really sure that it will have cost impact, but because it's intended to address potential conflicts, so we have conflict on one side and cost impact on the other side. This is why I put uncertain. The next one is for automatic doors. The section is 110518 currently, 11 currently. It used to be 110518. And this is a new model code language that replaces existing Washington amendment. And we already discussed this when we were discussing the existing amendment. The next section, 1106.6.1, it's just reformatting. There is no change in regulatory effect. 1106.8 is a new section related to parking meters and pay stations. This section requires parking meters and pay stations serving accessible parking spaces to be accessible. It seems to be a new requirement. However, local jurisdictions, as far as I'm aware of, they were enforcing this because if you have an accessible parking and your parking meter is not accessible, it's not okay based on the ADA laws, not the standards. Electric vehicle charging stations. Again, this is a new section, new requirements for electric vehicle charging stations. And do we need amendments to this section? Yes, because the new requirement exempts EV charging stations serving group R2, R3, and R4 occupancies. And this really conflicts with the Washington Building Code section 427.5. And 427.5 requires one accessible parking space to be served by EV charging infrastructure if the infrastructure is required. So this includes R2 occupancies. So we may need to amend 1107.2 or the building code, 427.5 in the building code. It needs one or another, but we can't leave 1107 as is. This is my recommendation. The next one, 1108.5.1.1, related to Group I accessible units. The new model code language replaces an existing Washington amendment. We already discussed that. And we already discussed that the model code section adds new requirements for accessible units to be dispersed. I just saved, copy and paste and save the same information here for clarity. The next section, 1108.5.1.2. This is for accessible units, Group I1, Condition 2. The same comment. 1108.5.2.1 for Group I2 nursing homes, accessible units for Group I2 nursing home. This is a new model code language that replaced the existing Washington amendment. The same with section 1108.5.4. This is for Group I2 rehabilitation facilities. 1110.2 is for toilet and bathing facilities. This is again new model code language that replaces existing Washington amendment. The same with section 1110.2.3. Section 1110.6 is for bottle filling stations, and this section requires, this is a new section in ANSI, and it requires bottle filling stations if provided to be accessible, and there are some exceptions. When evaluating this section, I didn't think there will be any cost impact. Section 1110.13.2 is sales and service counters and windows. So the title is modified. It was a point of sale and service counters, and currently reads again sales and service counters and windows. So this is the first change in ANSI. And the text is also modified to match modifications in 2017 ANSI. The addition of windows into this section clarifies that sales and service windows are required to be accessible whether a counter is provided at that location or not. And I consider this section with no change in regulatory effect, and doesn't have cost impact and doesn't need Washington amendment to it. 1110.15 related to controls, operating mechanisms, and hardware. There are 5 exceptions currently in 2009 ANSI, and these exceptions are replaced with new reference to ANSI A 117 for coordination purposes. So the language got changed, but the requirements are the same. So no further action is needed. This is my recommendation. 11.4.14 related to swimming pools, wedding pools, cold baths, hot tubs, and spas. It just adds cold baths to the title and to the text. The last one is 1111.4.15 for shooting facilities and firing positions. And the difference is that this section adds a new exception for shooting facilities with firing positions on freestanding platforms elevated more than 12 feet above grade. And when evaluating the section, I didn't believe it needs a further action or creates any cost impact. So this is for chapter 11. So again, I tried to provide a little bit more details to avoid going back and forth between chapter 11 and ANSI. So in the column reviewer comments, it may seem too much, but I wanted to save you some time, again, going back and forth between the code and the standard. And with the cost and amendment needed, it's my recommendation whether or not we need, the council needs to amend this section. And my opinion, if this new section in ANSI will create a cost impact. So again, this is all for chapter 11. I guess we will need the comments from TAG members and recommendations.
Sure. So thank you, Stoyan. Do you think it's appropriate to take a vote on this yet, or will we, should we, let, maybe take a look at stuff, see if we do have any comments as a tag?
We can, yes. So what we have in the schedule, we will discuss a few chapters. On a week of March 7th, initially we scheduled a review TAG recommendations to the Building, Fire, and Plumbing Standing Committee. And for week of March 14, we reserved this date for any final action on the TAG recommendation to the standing committee. So what we can do, we can talk about these few chapters that we have today. We can finish the chapters, we can finish the significant changes next week on 7th. And at the same week, on March 7th, the same meeting, we can review the final version of the report for the existing amendments. And on March 14, we can reserve this date for final approval on both reports, the significant changes and the existing amendments. If this makes sense, what I'm saying.
Okay, that makes sense. So, okay, we'll move on to the next chapter then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next document is chapters 1, 12, and 31. And again, in this case, the TAG members will have the documents, and if additional time is needed for a review, then we'll have 1 week to consider the TAG recommendations.
Okay, okay, so I'm up. For chapter 1, code sections, I just lumped them together because that's how they were lumped together in the significant changes document. So 103, 107, 113, there were just kind of some revisions to provide consistent language between the administrative provisions of all the I codes. So they want to call it, code enforcement agency throughout all or the enforcement agency throughout all the codes. The same way they want to kind of refer to different things, and instead of putting like building department or something like that in there, they put, blank. You get to decide what you want to call it. So I didn't really recommend any, there shouldn't be any additional costs, and I didn't recommend any changes to this. So section 110.3.5 is a new section, and a new inspection has been added that's applicable to the new construction types for A, B, and C that deal with connections there where fire resistance is provided by a wood cover. So I'm assuming there would be new costs associated with a new inspection. And I don't think that we need to provide a new amendment for this, but that may be, up for discussion with the TAG members. 110.3.7, inspections of weather exposed balconies. They have introduced a defined term of weather exposed surfaces to allow a more consistent application of the code requirement for the inspection. And it deletes, it basically clarifies that if your deck or your balcony is just getting wet because of some sort of an irrigation system, then it would not be considered a weather exposed balcony. And so I don't know whether there's additional costs associated with this. I don't know how, I guess it depends. I mean, around here, a lot of the balconies are probably weather exposed, but that I just put a question mark, and I don't think we need to make an amendment to this, but that's of course up for discussion. Can you yeah. So chapter 12, insulation of an unvented, that's the title of the chapter, 1202.3. And it's a new, they've added a new option for regulation of unvented attics with air permeable insulation and vapor diffusion ports in warmer climates. And it's an alternative to assist with energy efficiency. I think it would be less expensive because it's, instead of having to, it's just, instead of having to vent it mechanically or something, it's another option of just letting it naturally vent. And I just said, is there any sort of conflict with the energy code? Probably not, but I just sort of threw that out there as a comment. 1207, enhanced classroom acoustics. This is a new section that's added to the code to require educational occupancies to meet enhanced classroom acoustic requirements in the ANSI 117.1. And I'm assuming it will add more costs. I don't think we need to make any amendments to our state code. 1208.4, efficiency dwelling units. We did discuss this already, that we no longer need our state amendment because this code is fixing that discrepancy, and it's changing it back to the 190 square feet area requirement for efficiency dwelling units. And 1210.3 is related to restroom privacy. And this is just adding a screening element to make sure there's privacy for public restrooms. And we still need our state amendment because we have that gender neutral language that we have in that section. Moving on to chapter 31, special event structures, 3103.1. So they added a newly defined term called special event structures. And it's one of the new types of temporary structures that are regulated by the IBC and IFC. So I guess my comment is now these, typically, I mean, right now in the city of Tacoma, special event structures are, that's just handled by the fire department. So I would assume now we need to get a building permit for that. So that's just a comment that I made about that. 3114, public use restrooms in flood hazard areas, special criteria is to be applied where you have public use restrooms in the flood hazard areas, and it's publicly owned land, and where these restrooms are below the base flood elevation. So I'm sure this would probably add additional costs. I don't think we need to make any changes with state code though. 3115, intermodal shipping containers. The use of intermodal shipping containers as buildings and structures is now recognized in the IBC with minimum safety requirements. And I just put yes, it would increase costs, and I don't think we need any state changes at this point. And that's it.
Thank you, Sue. Any comments? All right, good job. No comments. Stoyan, do we have any other sections on our
Chapter
list?
9. We have chapter 9.
Okay. Corey, are you ready to go over chapter 9?
I am ready.
Beautiful. I'll give you the floor.
All right, very good. Well, I followed Stoyan's lead. I did every change in chapter 9. However, I think there were particularly approximately 6 items that are of note that would potentially impact costs and generate comments for the council. So the first one that I see as a significant change was 903.242, the third one down there. So now sprinklers are now required for any occupancy that is manufacturing distilled spirits. So there's no square footage threshold or anything. So it just says if you're an F1 producing distilled spirits that you shall be sprinklered. So certainly a change there. The one that's kind of associated with that is 903.293, just a couple items down there. So sprinklers are also now required for what they call bulk storage of distilled spirits or wine. Again, no square footage established, no definition of bulk storage is established. This one's certainly a cost. I've put my opinion in there as far as, you know, as a code person, a fire code person, I could see where this could be misconstrued. You know, to me, bulk storage is like warehouse, you know, S1, you know, S1 is S1. So, you know, the back room of the grocery store is, you know, M to me, you know, not an S. So, but I could see how this could be, maybe might want to help define this some more. I find it interesting that sprinklers were required for distilled spirits for manufacturing and then also wine, but there was not sprinklers required for the manufacturing of wine. So I was a little, you know, I guess they're worried about fortified type wines or what there. I was surprised that they kind of grouped wine in with this. Certainly we have lots of wineries here in Washington, and you know, if they have to sprinkler any new bulk warehouses, that definitely is going to be a cost impact for them. So any comments from the rest of the TAG members on that?
Yeah, this is Mark. I have a comment. As far as the flammability of wine, is it flammable at all?
Well, most of it's not. That's why I don't know why, you know, I see where the manufacturing is for spirits and storage is for spirits, but only wine was the only one that was, and maybe it's because of the wine barrels. I'm trying to, you know, if there's been a lot of losses in bulk wine storage facilities, I'm not sure.
You know, I used to work in Walla Walla. This would really impact those guys. And
Yeah, this would only impact new things, but
yeah, I don't see where the concern is. That they should have maybe an alcohol percentage where it turns into the flammability index is,
you know,
significant or something.
There's no definition for distilled spirits. I could see, you know, from an enforcement side, I could see, you know, people enforcing this all different kinds of ways. So, you know, my opinion is that maybe we need to, you know, maybe tighten this up a little bit. What do you think, Chris?
Chris says he's having network issues.
Oh, okay. Well, I can go on to the other ones and come back to that one. That one was by far the one that I thought was not written really great. The next one that I thought was had an impact was on the top of the second page. Yeah, 903.210, new item number 3. Sprinklers are now required for open parking garages exceeding 48,000 square feet. So it's certainly a cost for those types of parking garages. I think a lot of bigger jurisdictions were probably already requiring these to be sprinklered. I don't know how many parking garages are being built of that size, but certainly the flammability of parking garages has definitely gone way up with the new vehicles, with electric cars and batteries, all the plastics and everything in these cars. There's been some huge fire losses in parking garages, both here and abroad. So I can definitely see why that is come about in the code. So the next one is the next one right below that is for the relatively new occupancy, which is the mechanical access parking garages. This is where you park your car on a little ramp and it takes your car and parks it for you somewhere in a storage conveyance type system, and there's no access for the public into these, but there's also very little and poor access for fire departments, and these cars are stacked up like cordwood in here. And again, the flammability of newer type vehicles is quite high. So again, I can see why this came into the code. Probably the next 903312 is the other one that will probably raise some eyebrows as far as the use that they've limited the use of 13R fire sprinkler systems. So, 13R was written as a code that was supposed to limit structures to 4 stories. It says that right in the definition of the code, but previously it had been used where they build 4 stories of wood frame on top of like type 1 construction for like apartment buildings on top of these podiums. So they ended up with 6-story buildings using a 13R system, at least in the top stories. So this is definitely a change, definitely a cost. So there's one more, I think it was on the 3rd page here, 907210. This is for Group S. This is for the mini storage, public self-storage type buildings, requiring manual fire alarm systems for public story buildings, 3 stories or higher, if they're not fire sprinklered. So yeah, they keep building these in, they used to build these, land was cheap, and they used to build 1 story and build 20 buildings, and they're all 1 story. Well, they're building these in cities now, so they're 3, 4, 5 stories, getting it higher and higher off the ground. You have the public in these buildings. If you've never been in them, they're somewhat confusing to exit out of. So I can see why this was required. It helps give people time to get out if there is a fire in these types of buildings. I would say most of these are going to be sprinkled anyway, so I don't know that how often this is really going to be applied. So those were the 6 major ones that I thought would have major costs or complaints about them. Any questions on any of the other ones? Really lots of these were just clarifications or wordsmithing, editorial type changes. So lots of those. I'm fairly familiar with Chapter 9 as a fire marshal and apply section of the code on a daily basis. So that's about all the comments I had, unless there was some other comments from the tag members.
Thank you, Corey. Any comments, questions? All right, great job.
Thank you.
Stillian said that's everything we had listed for today in chapters, correct?
This is what we received, yes. If there is something that we don't have, but it's being done, we can go through it, but I'm not aware of, these are the chapters that we got.
Okay, does anyone else have anything they'd want to go over? Or is everyone else still working?
I'm still working on mine. This is Damon, by the way. I'm going to work with Stoyan today to get mine situated, but I'll be ready to present next week.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty.
And I'm sorry, Andrew, I cut you off a little bit.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. I had nothing worthwhile to say.
I can work on some of the chapters, but my problem was that I didn't know if TAG members are working on chapters and which chapters. I just didn't want to duplicate the work. So if some of the TAG members need help with the chapters, please feel free, email me and I can spend some time. Next week, we have to finish all chapters. And for March 14, we can vote on each chapter or each section. And also for March 14, we'll have the final report. Well, it's not the final report, but it's a draft report for the standing committee. So I will keep this date, March 14, for both the significant changes and the existing amendments. And Andrew, you are also the chair for the standing committee. So I'm not sure what format will be best for the standing committee and for the council when they review the reports. I can do whatever we are using now, put it in the same document, and the council and the standing committee will have all sections. For the existing amendments, I don't know if the spreadsheet we were working on will be adequate for the standing committee and the council. If not, I can.
Yep, I think the spreadsheet's got all the information we need in there.
Yeah, I was a little afraid if we have a little bit too much.
No, I don't think so. It's separated by columns, so if
Okay.
we don't want to look at certain columns, we don't have to.
Okay, so if this is the case, then we can finish our chapters, the significant changes next week, and I will make the final draft reports available for the TAG for March 14th.
Perfect, thank you.
Hey.
Anything else for the good of the order?
Andrew?
Yep, go ahead, Todd.
This is Todd. Is it appropriate if I ask this tag an informal interpretation question? I found a discrepancy between 18 and our Washington 18 and 2021. It's minor and it'll get written over, but it raised a question with the model code development, whether or not
we can give you our opinions. I don't know if it'll be any more than that. Is that?
Yeah, no, I think it's outside of my expertise. It's more of a fire related question. And since we have code officials on the line, can we pull up the code quickly? Do we have access to that, Krista?
Shannon, which code?
Oh, I'm sorry, Shannon. So in our code, or in 2021, in chapter 6.
So the IBC.
Yes, please.
I'll need a minute to get to that.
Okay. And specifically what it relates to is in the new type 4 construction types, the A, B, and C, the model code adds a definition in chapter 2, which says mass timber is, type 4 construction. So that points us to chapter 6. Chapter 6 then says, per these new sections for A, B, and C, and the HT, and the prescriptive dimensional requirements in chapter 23. So that's where you get into the historic heavy timber beams and columns shall be, 6 and 8 inches and so forth, right? What's confusing is when you go to section, when you in right here, 602, you'll see that in that first paragraph, there, I'm trying to, now I'm trying to see it here. Okay, we got to scroll down a little bit. I'm sorry. So 602.4. There we go. Right when it opens up here, you'll see in that first paragraph, there's an and where it says, we go past the fire resistance rating, and then you say the minimum dimensions and permitted materials for building elements should comply with the provisions of this section and section 2304. Now, in our Washington 18 amendments, we say including, but it's the same thing. So the and overwrite this. Now, most people's interpretation is that then you have to meet all those prescriptive dimensional requirements if you're doing A, B, and C. Is that everyone's kind of consensus on this call? Because the question becomes, then this language is then repeated in the HT section further down. So there's a kind of a redundancy, which is just kind of poor code writing, but more importantly, the question should there be different provisions for A, B, and C? And the American Wood Council we're having this discussion right now.
So the question I think I heard was, do we apply dimensional requirements normally of heavy timber construction to the smooshed together wood types?
Yeah,
Is that the question?
With A, B, and C, and that's how most people interpret it right now. But that is the question. Does that and automatically kick you to the dimensional requirements? And we don't have to answer this question now. I just want to raise it and have people think about it a little bit as AWC is kind of wrapping their heads around it if it's worded correctly.
Oh, this is
My
Ray.
personal first pass.
Todd, if you want to email me
Go
that
ahead,
question, I can take it before the fire tag tomorrow. We have a meeting.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to raise the question just because there's other chatter going on. Okay. So no action. Thank you.
Anything else?
I did just have one comment. I want to thank you guys. I've been lurking in a few different tags just to pay attention and my tag will come up later, I'm told, and I'm just trying to learn. So I appreciate the discussion all you guys are having and just trying to learn the processes. And anyway, so even though I'm lurking for a purpose.
Well, thank you, Corey. Lots of pressure on me, but yeah, you'll do just fine. Things are very informal, so give everyone a chance to speak, and that's all you need to do.
Yeah, I just want to try to just seeing the process in its function. It'll help me when I am in those shoes later, I think. So anyway, just wanted to thank you.
Yep, thank you.
This is Mark. I had a comment. I'm not going to be able to work on any significant changes for chapters 8 and 26. We got a huge influx of permit applications because of the code adoption, and I just don't have the time just because of the new code.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
I will work on 8 and 26.
Thank you, Stevian. All right, last chance if you've got anything to add. Well, thank you. We will chat next week. Thanks for all the good work. And if you need anything at all, you can always contact me and or Stoyan or anyone else on the staff. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Yep. Thank you, Shannon.